New Year, Timothy Snyder, and Aid for Ukraine. This is what we're going to talk about today. This video will be partly about New Year, partly about brilliant article of Timothy Snyder, and how each of us individually can help Ukraine, and why should we do that. Let's go! Hi, I'm Elena. Welcome to my political channel, Enough of Propaganda. And please like, subscribe, share, write comments. This is what is helping to YouTube promoting the videos and make the truth available for everyone. But before we're gonna talk about it, I want to wish you Happy New Year. This is my first video in 2024. And this will be again about Ukraine, because this is the most important thing what is happening right now. Nevertheless, I wish you all Happy New Year, and today is Russian Orthodox Christmas, which used to be Ukrainian Orthodox Christmas as well, January 7th. And I guess situation changing, and it's very hard to see this holiday, which has a long history. In Russia, for example, in former USSR, the most important holiday was New Year, not Christmas, which for most of the time I lived in the USSR and in Russia, it was forbidden. It wasn't even a holiday or day off of any kind. That is why the USSR tried to replace religious holidays with Soviet holidays, and one of them was a New Year. But anyways, I wish a victory for Ukraine, which will end this war. I wish the failure of Putin regime end soon. I sure hope for that. I doubt it will happen in 2024, but nobody knows. It can. Everything can happen. I wish you to be healthy, happy, and alive, which is the most important. And I wish peace, but not by any costs, because Ukraine only can achieve peace by winning this war. And so is Russia. If Ukraine win the war, there will be peace. If Ukraine will not win the war, it will not be peace for Russia either. So the best thing which can happen to Russia if Ukraine win this war on the battlefield, because Ukraine doesn't have any other choice. And now let's get back to the article of Mr. Snyder, Professor Snyder. This is Timothy Snyder. In case you don't know who he is a professor of history at Yale University, an American historian who is specializing in history of Central and Eastern Europe, Soviet Union, and the Holocaust. And now we'll find out why his words are important to us and what he actually said. Professor Snyder, as a historian, understands very well that the war in Ukraine is existential conflict. It is not just something which can be taken lightly. This war is not like any other, some little territorial conflict somewhere, nowhere, which mean nothing to majority of the world. This is essential for all of us. That is why he wrote the article, which called "The Neighbor's House is on Fire, and we are watching it burn." I will read this article. It's applicable not only to Americans, which he clearly talking to, it's applicable to all of us. And in the end of this video, I will show you, on my own example, what one person can do to help. To help their neighbors, to help stop the fire in their house and not let it spread to our house. You have a good neighbor. He does a lot for you. He keeps the street clean around your house. He mows your lawn when you are away. He signs for your packages and brings them to you later. Your kids go and play with his kids in the backyard. He has an alarm on his house with a camera, which you don't. And he once ran burglars away from your house. He's done a thing or two for you that you haven't noticed. Like the time he stopped a crew from mistakenly taking down a tree in your front yard. And the time he found your cat outside on the street, he gave it to your kid. And now your neighbor's house has caught fire. The flames are just now visible. There is plenty of time to react. In fact, you happen to be standing nearby at exactly the right place, watering your garden, with a hose in your hand. The flames are in easy reach. Your neighbor runs to you and asks you to just turn the water in the direction of the flame. You refuse. You turn off the water and walk away. And then you hurry down to your basement and shut off the valve, just to make sure your neighbor can't be helped. All you had to do is flick of your wrist, turn the hose in the right direction. But you didn't. It wouldn't have cost you anything, a nickel on your water bill that you wouldn't notice. And if you had helped, you'd have been a hero. Your neighbor would remember you, as would the press, as would your kids, as would everyone. But you choose not to help. Your neighbor's house burns down, and then yours does too. This is currently our Ukraine policy. We are choosing to let a good neighbor burn. Ukraine does things for us that we need, and often that we neglect to do ourselves or cannot do ourselves. It does things for us that we don't notice. These are not small things. By resisting Russia, Ukraine shows the world that there are people who care about democracy enough to take risks for it. It reduces the risk of nuclear proliferation and nuclear war by showing that nuclear blackmail does not work. It maintains the international legal order. It fulfills the NATO mission by absorbing and reversing a Russian attack, making war elsewhere in Europe very unlikely. It deters China from risky action in the Pacific by showing how difficult offensive operations are. These are all hugely important American interests, most of which we cannot fulfill ourselves. Ukraine can fulfill them, if we will help just a little, in ways we wouldn't even notice. Ukraine is on fire. In the past few days, Russia has launched something like 500 rockets and drones at Ukrainian civilians, including nearly 100 drones on New Year's Eve. Russia continues to undertake offensive operations in Ukraine. Russian propagandists and Russian leaders continue to announce the same genocidal war aims now as at the beginning of the war. The end of the Ukrainian state and the end of the Ukrainian nation. Ukrainian citizens under Russian occupation continue to be tortured and deported. Ukraine resists very effectively with the weapons it has. It has opened the Black Sea to trade, something that no one expected. It is holding back the Russian advance, inflicting huge casualties. It is shooting down missiles and drones. So we are standing here with easy access to water. It would be so easy to help, and yet we are turning away from our neighbor in need. Ukraine needs our support, and some of our congressional representatives are blocking it. The amount of question is not meaningful, given that what we spend on national security, it is about a nickel on the defense budget dollar. And that nickel is extremely well spent. The Defense Department budget, after all, is meant to keep us safe. The nickel on the dollar brings us security in the Atlantic and in the Pacific. It brings us a reduced risk of nuclear war and the greatest international respect for law. It brings us the sense that we have friends who take risks for good things. There is no other nickel of the Defense Department dollar that is nearly so important as this one. And in fact, we don't even really spend that nickel on Ukraine. Most of the defense money we nominally spend on Ukraine actually stays in the United States. The arms Ukraine needs are in large measure weapons that your tax dollars would otherwise be spent to decommission, to destroy and throw away. For example, we have about 1,000 long-range missiles that we will soon pay tax money to take apart and drop in the landfills. Those missiles given instead to Ukraine would seriously hinder Russian attacks and put Ukraine in a position to win the war. We are turning off the water, running down to the basement, caught in some strange self-destructive fit of self-absorption. We are putting out our own house at risk. Ignoring our neighbor is the worst thing we can do, even if all we care is about is ourselves. Everything that Ukrainians are doing for us can be undone this year. Russia can win and be encouraged to start other wars, where our participation is likely to be much more direct. China can be encouraged, and we can find ourselves in cataclysm over Taiwan. International order can break down, and we can confront confusing, difficult, and painful conflicts all over the world. Russia can halt food deliveries to Asia and Africa, leading to starvation and further war. Everyone could be demoralized by the realization that those who risk their life for democracy were sold out, just because Americans lack the wherewithal to what it is obviously the right thing. It doesn't have to be that way. It is easy to help a good neighbor. This is a conflagration that we can stop with a flick of the wrist, a bit of legislation to support Ukraine, and we all have a safer year and safer lives. Professor Snyder is right about the absolutely everything, except maybe that Russia can win the war. But nevertheless, Russia will definitely try to win not just this war, but go further. And Professor Snyder himself helped a lot. There is a link in the article where you can help Ukraine. He provided a bunch of sensors, over 2,500 of them, I believe, for early detection of drones and stuff like that. And we can help Ukraine. Last year, basically a year ago, in January 2023, Professor Snyder had a speech, and there is an article by Alexandra Zakharova, How a Ukraine Victory Will End the Era of Empire. He's absolutely right about that. And he emphasizes that the victory of Ukraine in a full-scale war with Russia is needed not only by Kiev, but also by the civilized world. Why is that? You will find out if you read this article. I'll just stop on several parts of it. And the world needs Ukrainian victory. And Russia must lose the war, for its own sake even. And this is why. First of all, reason one, stop the atrocities. The quote of the Snyder is, the Russian occupation is a genocide. Wherever Ukrainians reclaim territory, they save lives and restore the principle that people have the right not to be tortured, deported, or killed. Yes, people have a right to live, and that is why it's important. I have the video myself which is saying about Putin's original plan about Ukraine exposed, which is still, those two articles, they still on a Russian main news source, saying what exactly Russia gonna do with Ukraine. And that is what Russia exactly doing right now on the occupied territories of Ukraine. Reason 2, preserve the international legal order. This is one of the most important things, because the war in Ukraine and Putin's ambitions to reconquer basically all the former USSR and then go further is like a ticking bomb underneath of everybody's chair. Everything we worked for, everything we built so far is in danger because of Russian aggression in Ukraine. Because there is no law, as Putin says. There is no order. He dragging the world centuries back into the past, when might was right, and everybody who was stronger could just go and grab whatever they want. This is not true. The whole society and the whole world moved on from it centuries ago. Putin is dragging us back. Reason 3, end the era of empire. This may be the last war. It's fought according to the colonial logic, that there is no other state and people. But this turning point can only be achieved if Russia loses. Reason 4, defend the European Union peace project. And Russia is going on not only after Ukraine. Russia intends to go after other European states. Some of them are NATO countries. Reason 5, give a chance to the rule of law in the Russian Federation. This is very important to me as a Russian citizen as well as Canadian. As long as Russia wages imperial wars, it is trapped in a repressive domestic politics. Future generations of Russians could live better and freer, but only if Russia loses this war. Reason 6, weaken the prestige of tyrants. This is one of the also very important ones. There is a trend towards authoritarianism, which Putinism as a force and a model has already become a symbol of this century. And in opinion of Mr. Snyder, Professor Snyder, the defeat of Vladimir Putin's regime from democracy will change this trend. He said that fascism is a power and it is discredited by defeat. So no other tyrant could decide it's a good idea to follow Putin's footsteps. Reason 7, remind that democracy is the best system. And this is true. I personally can vouch for that because I lived in 2 dictatorships, in the USSR and in Russia, and now I live in for over 19 years in a democratic country, Canada, and travel the world. There is no comparison about life in the dictatorship and a life in a free democratic country. People live happier, people live longer. Up to the point from 8 to 16 years of life longer. That's what Canadians are living longer than Russians, men and women, depends. Reason 8, remove the threat of a big war in Europe. For decades, the regional war scenario was a confrontation with the USSR and then with Russia. A Ukrainian victory eliminates this scenario, making another Russian offensive unlikely. And right now, Ukrainians basically pulling the teeth out of that poisonous snake, Putin's regime, by destroying the old Soviet ammunition which Russia had. That much that now Russia has to beg for the ammunition and weapons from North Korea and Iran. So they demilitarizing Russia, making Russia harmless for the future because they simply wouldn't have enough weapons. And if we will keep sanctions on Russia, they wouldn't be able to create new ones, enough to be able to be aggressive country to anybody else in the future. Reason 9, remove the threat of war in Asia. And in recent years, a Chinese invasion of Taiwan has been a leading global war scenario, says Timothy Snyder. And Ukrainian, I agree with him that Ukrainian victory will teach China that such an offensive operations is not a good idea. Reason 10, prevent the spread of nuclear weapons. This is another very important reason. And as Snyder recalls that Ukraine renounced nuclear weapons in 1991. Ukraine was the third nuclear country in the world. And that country freely gave up their weapons to Russia in exchange of several countries signed the Budapest Memorandum. And one of them was Russia, another one was Ukraine, United States, and United Kingdom. And some other countries signed different documents, which they promised to protect Ukraine from nuclear attack as well, and keep its sovereignty and their borders intact. And yet, Russia broke the agreement and attacked Ukraine in 2014 and in 2022. Reason 11, reduce the risk of nuclear war. Ukraine's victory reduces the likelihood of two main scenarios of war involving nuclear states and generally counters the proliferation of nuclear weapons. Nothing will reduce the risk of nuclear war more than Ukrainian victory. I absolutely agree with Professor Snyder on that. Reason 12, prevent future resource wars. According to Professor Snyder, in addition to being a serial perpetrator of war crimes, the Russian PMC of Wagner Group, which is turned out to be a Russian army, seizes mineral resources through violence wherever it can. They do it in Africa, and as I have another videos not about only PMC Wagner, the new PMCs created instead of Wagner, like Redoute for example, continues the Wagner's activities in Africa, seizing the mines and diamond mines and everything in other countries on behalf of Russia. And Ukraine stopping Russian aggression, this will prevent that from happening, because Russia is trying to claim resources, natural resources and food, control the food and control resources in other countries. Reason 13, prevent hunger. A Ukrainian victory should also guarantee food supplies and prevent future famines, which is true. Russia already trying to control food. It tried to prevent Ukraine from sending grain to Africa. If we in North America can survive without Ukrainian grain, perfectly fine, then African countries and hundreds of millions of people in the world could starve if Ukraine wouldn't export the grain, and Russia tried to prevent it. Yet, activities of Ukraine on the battlefield, basically the country without a navy, defeated Russian fleet so much that they afraid to show up in Crimea anymore. And Ukraine established that corridor to provide grain to other countries. And Russia, nothing Russia can do about it. This is one of the biggest victory of the past year of Ukraine. Russia holding food as a weapon. Russia holding resources, energy as a weapon. That must be stopped. As one Russian propagandist said, hunger is our only hope, explains Timothy Snyder. And this is the hope of Putin. This is why he is going after Ukraine first out of all 15 Soviet former republics. Because he can control energy and food. Reason 14th, accelerate the transition away from fossil fuels. Vladimir Putin and his aggression actions demonstrates the threat that oligarchy poses in the future, and militarizing energy sources accelerated the world's transition to the renewable energy sources, and this will continue if Russia loses. Reason 15. Affirm the value of freedom. Ukrainians have every reason to defend freedom as freedom against something, against Russian occupation, emphasizes Timothy Snyder. And he believes that Ukraine are reminding the world that freedom is really about something, the right to be the people you want to be in the future they can help shape. Professor Snyder said, I am a historian of political crimes, and for me personally, number one, the defeat of the ongoing genocidal project would be more than enough reason to want Ukraine to win. But each of the other 14 is of great importance, and he's right. And he's also pointing out that this opportunity once in a lifetime thing, and it shouldn't be wasted. Ukrainians give us a chance to turn this century around, a chance for freedom and security that we couldn't have achieved on our own, no matter who we were. All we have to do is help them win. This is very important, and this is all why. If that amount of reasons not enough to support Ukraine, I don't know what is. This article is valid today as it was a year ago. Putin and his regime must be stopped for all these reasons. That is why, please help Ukraine. Write to your politicians, wherever you are in any country, even Russians, supposed to stand up and defend Ukraine, because Ukraine right now defending Russia as well, even if it is not their goal. It's just by defending themselves and destroying Russian army on the battlefield. They helping Russians. Russians have a now unique opportunity to stand up and help themselves, while Russian armies and Russian other military forces preoccupied with the war in Ukraine. In the end of the 2023 and the beginning of 2024, I decided to summarize some of personal achievements of mine for 2023. Not to brag about it or anything, it's just to show how much one person can do. Because Putin trying to play with people, trying to lie to people, saying that nobody is important, nobody can do anything, and so on. This is not true. And this is what my example is. Over 500,000 views of my posts on Quora. This is a site where people answering questions, asking and answering questions. And this is one of the spaces, like pages on Quora, which I'm a moderator. And this is showing that in the first days of the new year, we had 2.4 million views a week. And I am taking part in being a contributor in about 22 spaces at minimum. So each space like a page where people are answering questions, and this is just one space. 2.4 million views a week. This was on the 1st of January. I had over 500,000 content views, 1.8 thousand posts, over 500 answers of questions, and so on. So this is just one part of my activities. I'm less successful on YouTube. This is only over 65,000 views, but nevertheless, one of the another significant achievements in 2023 was that many subscribers on YouTube and other social media platforms stood up in defense of the pro-Ukrainian YouTube channel Warthog Defense, which actually has over 630,000 subscribers at the time, and that YouTube had shut down. I also participated in defending this channel, and we won. The channel wasn't only restored, but YouTube also apologized to its creator. And in addition, my family and I helped everyone we could help with everything we could do. Lobbied for aid for Ukraine and the protection of political prisoners in Russia, reached out to our Canadian politicians, attended rallies, sent material assistance, and other things. All from my basically family pocket, because I don't make any money on any of my political posts, views, or YouTube or anything, because I just simply don't have enough subscribers on YouTube. Another my personal happy moments of the last year that I helped a few Ukrainians who came to Canada, and some of them it was long distance help. It's like I live in British Columbia and they are in Ontario and Manitoba. These people came, they ran from the war. They don't know either one of two languages in Canada, like neither English or French. They couldn't drive a car, which is Canada is a country for drivers, basically. They didn't know the language, and many of them just simply didn't have profession Canada needs. And yet they build a life here, and I just got news that one of them just got a job, and another one already got the job earlier. To find a job here in Canada wasn't easy, and Canadians helped them to settle here, find a job, and look after themselves. And this is just a fraction, just a part of what I do to help Ukraine. If I can do it, so can you. Please help Ukraine. Thanks for watching, and have a great day and a year. Please be alive, be safe, and please help Ukraine. Learn the truth and stay informed. See you later.